Welcome to the Belly Brain Connection. I'm Hannah Winans. I'm a certified functional nutrition counselor, and I'm on a mission to help educate people about the connection between their gut health and mental well-being. Thank you for tuning in. I believe that our gut health is the cornerstone to our overall health, and when we nourish our bodies, we nourish our minds. Today is episode 11. Last week, we did a little bit of a recap of my first 10 Belly Brain episodes. We did a little bit of a recap on the books that we've started and the reviews that we've done, as well as some of the topics that we've covered. I also talked a little bit about leaky gut syndrome, which is something that I think a lot of people have heard about and are maybe wondering if it might apply to them. Of course, as with all things belly brain, you certainly need to talk to your doctor. I am not giving any kind of medical advice, but it was just something to be aware of, that there is a syndrome called leaky gut. And I think a lot of people may have it and don't even know it. So I covered some of the signs that you might have that may tell you that you have leaky gut, as well as some of the things that can lead to causing it. And in that, I talked a little bit about NSAIDs, so non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NAIDS. But I have a horrible time pronouncing that word, and I keep saying NSAIDs. So I did my whole podcast last week pronouncing that incorrectly, and I'm correcting myself, and I'm kind of stuttering over that word. I don't know why it's so hard to say, but just so you know, what I was talking about, what I am talking about are NSAIDs. And those are things like Tylenol, ibuprofen, and a lot of us take those for a lot of different things. And I don't think many people realize that they can wreak havoc on our guts, our gut health, and our mucosal lining in our gut. So that was the topic of last week, was just trying to incorporate gut-friendly foods that can really help kind of protect your gut if you're having to take that kind of a medication. So that was last week. But for this week, I wanted to introduce something new to Belly Brain. I thought it would be fun to do a food of the week every week, and I'll pick something that I just happen to maybe come up that week, or I'm eating, or I find interesting, and talk a little bit about that. And of course, always trying to tie that back to not just our overall health, but our gut health as well. And then I wanted to touch on fermented foods a little bit. So we'll see if I can get that all done in 15 minutes. But to start off I've got some notes here. So if you're watching, you see me looking back and forth, that's what's going on. I try to get this organized. And some days I do a great job of it, and some days I don't. So the food of the week this week is the date, D-A-T-E. This is one of my absolute favorites. I always feel they're very decadent, and I always feel kind of fancy, and I don't know, they're ancient, and there's just something so cool and satisfying about dates. They've been cultivated for over 6,000 years, and they're grown mostly, I'm looking at my notes, in the Middle East and North Africa. Jewel dates are called the king of the dates, and those are the ones that I see the most at the supermarket. I don't really know what the other dates are, so I guess I just always go for the medjool, or I think that's mostly what I'm eating. And they come from the date palm tree. So ancient, delicious, but they have so many nutritional components to it that are really healthy for us. So I thought I would hit on those a little bit. They are packed with essential vitamins and minerals, including potassium. They actually have more potassium than a banana. So they have iron, magnesium, vitamin B6, and fiber. They promote heart health because of that high potassium content. And if they can help regulate blood pressure and reduce the risk of heart disease, they can help control blood sugar levels. So I'm always pretty sensitive about my blood sugar levels. And so I wear a continuous glucose monitor. And so I'm always kind of watching that. And because dates have so much soluble fiber in them, it slows down the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream. And so that can be a nice sweet treat that's not going to spike your blood sugar levels too much. Now, they do have a lot of calories in them. And, it's a serving of dates would be like 3 to 4 max is kind of a serving, but they're so rich and delicious that really, I feel like that's pretty satisfying. Because they have a lot of fiber in them, they're really helpful for your digestion. They are rich in antioxidants. They have phenolic compounds, flavonoids, which protect cells from damage caused by free radicals. They support bone health because they've got a lot of vitamin K and magnesium in them. They enhance brain function because they've got a lot of vitamin B6, which is essential for producing neurotransmitters involved with brain function and mood regulation. They reduce inflammation. They promote muscle growth, because of the potassium and magnesium, and they're just delicious. So I like to add them every once in a while to a smoothie if I want to sweeten it up a little bit more. I like to eat them straight up. I see them there. I see them in a lot of appetizers, which are really delicious. I know one of the things that I love to do is put a walnut, kind of open up the date a little bit and stuff a walnut in there. And that's just a really kind of perfect texture, right? You've got the chewiness and the crunchiness, and both things are just really good for you. So dates, delicious, good for you. If you have like IBS or some of those gut health issues, there's a lot of fiber in there. So for some people, a lot of fiber can kind of wreak havoc. So be careful with them. But just absolutely delicious and a really good alternative when you want that sweet something, but you don't want to hop on that sugar train. Try a couple dates. I know some people make like date kind of brownie balls kind of, and I don't, there's a recipe out there somewhere, but it's incorporating chocolate and using dates as basically the sweetener in them. And they're kind of a powerful little snack. So dates, love them. Food of the week, delicious. And I actually have some. I got some organic dates just the other day, and I have them in my cupboard, and I'm having a hard time not eating the whole thing. So just remember, 2, 3, 4 dates is probably plenty. So don't go too crazy. Okay, fermented foods. So I have never fermented anything other than making yogurt, and I'm about to try it. And I think it's actually surprisingly easy from everything that I've read. I'm going to try to ferment some vegetables. And with vegetables, there's a pretty easy process called lactofermentation. And it just basically involves salt and water and whatever it is you're trying to ferment. But for fermentation, what happens when you ferment food? I don't know that a lot of people really understand what's going on in there. So during fermentation, microorganisms like yeast, bacteria, and mold break down the carbs in the food. And that results in foods that are typically pretty rich in probiotics. So I think a lot of us know that yogurt is a fermented food, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, miso, which is fermented soybeans, is another fermented food that's really got some great gut healthy components to it. Apple cider vinegar is another one. I have the Bragg's apple cider at my house, and I take a swig of that every day. I throw it in a little bit of water. Sometimes I'll throw it in seltzer water. I like tart and tangy, and it kind of makes it more refreshing. But I make sure I get about a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in every day. I've heard there's a lot of other health benefits to it. I just really like it. So that's something that's easy. And that's something that's easy to incorporate if you're looking for something fermented. I don't know that it has probiotics in it. I believe maybe prebiotics. I need to research that more. But I know it can actually help with, for people who have heartburn. It's actually, I could dive into that another episode, but it actually can help with that, which it seems counterintuitive because it is kind of acidic, but it helps to balance out those acids. Another interesting fermented food is pickles, but they have to be fermented. So some pickles are basically brined or however they prepare them in vinegar. That is not true fermentation. So at least not the fermentation with the probiotics that we're looking for. Anytime you're looking at a food that you're wondering if it might be fermented and have the probiotics that you want, if there's vinegar in the ingredient list, it's probably not going to have the probiotics you're looking for. It needs to be fermented like in salt. So there's certain pickles, kosher pickles sometimes can mean that they could have the probiotics you're looking for, but not like the classic like Clausen pickles. I'm talking about real kosher pickles. You could look at that ingredient label, and if you see that there's no vinegar in it and it's just salt, there's a good chance it was fermented in the way that we're looking for. Bubby's pickles, I believe they have a fermented pickle that they sell. I found a probiotic salsa made by Wild Brine. I found that at Eureka Natural Foods in McKinleyville, and that is like a fermented salsa, and it's really good. So fermenting vegetables and fruit is actually pretty easy from what I'm reading, and it's basically the recipes that I've seen have been the vegetable that you want to ferment, salt, and then about a week of leaving it in a container or glass jar on your counter and letting the fermentation process do its thing. So another interesting food that's fermented, but doesn't necessarily have probiotics is sourdough bread. So what I've heard is that when you cook the sourdough, it kind of bakes out the probiotics, but it still can be a really good alternative for people who are gluten sensitive, because part of that fermentation process breaks down the sourdough bread to where it's more easily digested. So that can be helpful for, like I said, people who don't tolerate bread well. They may want to look at sourdough, but I need to do a little more research on that. But I'm hearing that the cooking of it kind of bakes out that specific bacteria that we're looking for gut health. Let's see what else. So we talked about yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi. What I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and ferment carrots. And we bought some carrots that I thought were fermented, but they were pickled, not fermented. There was a difference. So I decided that I'm going to try and ferment my own carrots, see how that goes. You can ferment onions. You can ferment fruit. And I don't think I've ever had fermented fruit. So I do know from the recipes that I've read that you want to use like a firmer fruit. You don't want to use anything too mushy because that fermentation process is going to break it down. So things like apple might be helpful. I don't know if that would be sweet or sour or what that would be. So, but I'm going to try and find out. And again, we like the fermentation process because of the healthy bacteria, the healthy probiotics that generates. And those are just another way to get those really good gut bugs into our systems. And by now, if you've been tuning into Belly Brain, you know how important it is that we protect our gut microbiome and are constantly introducing more and more of the healthier foods. So I'm going to post some links about fermented foods and maybe some recipes on the bellybrain.com website. So go ahead and go to that website and click on the New This Week tab. And that will have this podcast. It'll also have any links that I have to share. And, I've had fun making yogurt. And actually with the fermented foods, I think it could be even more fun. I'm really looking forward to making maybe some vegetable toppings that I can throw on like my salad and my soups. I do that a lot with sauerkraut, which I love, but it'd be fun to kind of mix it up a little bit. So I'll report back what works well for the fermentation process for me, what I found was easy and delicious. I'm going to try a vegetable and I'm going to try a fruit and we'll see how it goes. But like I said, I encourage you, if you're into this kind of thing, why not experiment? It does feel a little bit weird making things that are growing bacteria to eat. That for whatever reason, that just feels strange. But I'm going to trust these recipes and know that, these should work out okay. Fermented foods, people have been eating those since the beginning of time, I think, and we shouldn't be scared of them. But, it's just so out of the norm of what we do these days. And, in the old days, that was how they preserved food. And there's so many cultures now and I think America we're just not seeing a lot of it, but there's other cultures where they still really do incorporate a lot of fermented foods into their daily diets. So, kefir. Kefir was the other one. So yogurt and kefir, I've talked about those a lot on this show. I feel like I'm kind of repeating the same foods over and over again, but those are really kind of the basics. But if we can kind of come up with some new recipes for some new things to get these probiotics in, then that would be pretty exciting. So stay tuned. I will report back on my fermentation process. Yeah, just check out the bellybrain.com website. I'm going to also come up with a couple new books to review in the upcoming episodes. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great week. Bye.